All right, so this is the video for the warm-up on Wednesday, January the 23rd. Getting that right. First question, first task, rename the sheet 1 to pivot. So I'm going to right-click, I'm going to choose rename, I'm going to type in pivot. And set its tab color to a shade of the color blue. So it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to do tab color, and I'm just going to pick this blue. Okay. Make a copy of the pivot sheet and rename it subtotal. So I'm going to right-click on here. I'm going to choose move or copy. I'm going to choose create a copy. I'm just going to move it to the end. Otherwise, I think it'll put it at the beginning. Doesn't really matter to me. What was the first thing that you worked with? You worked with the pivot table, I think. Pivot sheet, so I'm just going to move it to the end. And I'm going to rename this, rename it subtotal. Okay. Step 3, using the pivot sheet, there we go. Create a pivot table to answer the question, what is the total number spent on each type of item for each of the regions? So I'm going to pick the table. I'm going to pick the table. Is there a quick way to pick the table? Do you know how to pick the table quickly? I don't know. Did you guys try this summarize with pivot table? Summarize this data in this table with a pivot table. Yeah, I never tried this before. Nice. Beautiful. I don't even have to select it. Beautiful. I want regions. It doesn't matter if it's in the rows or columns, your choice. And I want item along the side, and I want to sum up the total costs. I think that might be it. And then I'm just going to make those all currencies and open that up. Okay, I'm going to pause. I am going to create a pivot chart to graphically display the answer to the previous question. So if I click on here, can I just go, what can I do? Insert pivot chart? Oh, right here. Yeah. And I didn't tell you which one to really pick, so I'm assuming you just picked that one. I didn't really tell you which one to pick. So I think we're good. I didn't tell you to do anything special with it, so there you go. Okay. All right, I'm going to go to subtotal sheet. Use subtotaling to answer the same question that was answered using the pivot table. All right. I don't know how many of you noticed, but you can't do subtotaling on a table. So I want to know how many of you figured out how to do subtotaling on a table, because I don't think you have that option. Did you pick this data and then, I'm confused how you guys got this to work. Did you make it into a range rather than a table? I'm going to pause and ask a question. Okay, so the answer is you can't make a table you cannot subtotal on a table. So I'm going to pick this, I'm going to go to this table and I'm going to choose convert to range. Now it's back to a normal range. And now I'm going to do here. And now I'm going to be able to go data, subtotal. So what do I want to subtotal? I want to subtotal the sum of how much money was spent. So total, the sum, and it's going to be each change in the, now, some of you probably did item and followed by region. Some of you did region followed by item. So I'm going to go with what, I'm going to pause and ask what most people did. So before we all do this, subtotaling, I remembered. Somebody reminded me, we need to sort to be able to subtotal. So I'm going to sort, and most people sorted by region, and then they broke the ties using item. Okay, and then we're going to sort first by region. Sorry, we're going to sort by changes in the region. We're going to sum up the total, and we're going to hit OK. So all the central totals are right here, and so on. And then I'm going to subtotal again, and this time I'm going to subtotal within each group. I'm going to subtotal by item. and I'm going to sum up how much money was spent on each item. And I'm not going to replace the current subtotals. I'm going to get rid of that because I want to add on another level of subtotaling. So there we go. So within the central region, I spent this much money on binders. I spent this much money on desks, this much money on pens, this much money on pen sets, and on pencils. And in total, within central, I spent this much money. So this number here, 11,139, should show up right there. How much money I spent on central. These 5 values should show up here. And so on. Did I miss a step? Miss a step. The only thing that causes me grief is I've got binders, desks, pens, pen sets, and pencils. And what do I have here? I have binders, desks, pens, pen sets, and pencils. And then I've got binders, pens, pen sets, pencils, and then binders, desks, pen. Oh, I must not have sold any of the other types. Yeah, in the East, I only sold 3 different types. In Central, I sold 4 different things. Or in Central, I sold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. So if I look back here, there's got to be some zeros. Oh yeah, right here. I never sold any desks here, and I didn't sell any pen sets in the West. So there'll be 4 item subtotals for East, 4 for West, and there'll be 5 for Central. Okay, so I am going to take a moment to pause, and then we're going to get into protecting. Okay, so we're on to protection. So we're going to go to the pivot sheet, and I want to protect the entire pivot sheet using a password of pivot12345. So I'm going to right-click on pivot, and I'm going to choose protect, and I'm going to put in a password of pivot12345. I've not seen a question yet that forces you to change these options, allowing, specifying what users are allowed to do. But just be aware that's where you can get more picky as to what you want them to do. Okay, and only sell. Okay, so I've got that sheet protected, or at least, okay, so I've got it protected. I only want cell range A1 to A5. So I'm going to go to subtotal, and I'm going to pick the entire sheet, and I'm going to go under home, and I'm going to take the locks off all the cells. And then I'm going to go to A1 and A5, and I'm going to put the locks just on those cells. So that when I actually protect the sheet, only 1 through 5 will be locked and not modified. So I'm putting in a password of 12345. And let's see if this works. So if I go in here and I double click, anywhere I click, I cannot change anything on pivot. Every time I'm out of luck. But if I go to subtotal, I can put values in here. However, anywhere in 1 all the way down to A5 are locked, protected, but anywhere else I can make changes. So I've got that working. So I'm going to protect the entire workbook. So I think I can go under review and choose protect workbook. And I'm going to put in a password of work12345. You're protecting the structure of the workbook. So the user will not be able to do things like rearrange the sheets, delete a sheet, add a sheet, hide a sheet, unhide a sheet. You're protecting the structure of the workbook. All right, so there we go. Check the workbook for accessibility and set the alt text for your pivot chart to my pivot chart. So if I go to File and I want to inspect, I want to check accessibility, and I realize that I'm missing an alt text for the pivot chart. right here. It tells me what I want to do. The instructions are down here, but I can also take this pivot chart and I can do what? I think I might. Let's see what happens here. So can I do anything to there? Is that because I am protected? I think it is because I am protected. So I better unprotect this worksheet. And I think it's called pivot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that it's unprotected, I can actually do what I want. And go in here, pivot chart options, alt text, and I'm going to give it a table of a title of my pivot chart. And if I want, I could put in some stuff in here if I wanted to describe what the chart's all about. It's not asking me to do that. I'm going to go back and I am going to set the pivot chart. I'm going to re-protect it using a password of pivot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And apparently I got to do it. Oh, it doesn't remember the last password, so it's allowing me to, I'm going to set the same password. Not sure if we talked much about, well, I'm going to pause. There's a question. So the entire workbook can have a theme. I think if you go under view, no, page layout. Okay. This is not available to me. This is telling me this isn't available because maybe the workbook is locked. So I'm going to unlock the workbook, which is, I think the password is work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm going to go to page layout and oh my, that's the theme should be for the entire workbook. That's just a theme for the sheet. What is this called? There should be a theme for the actual workbook. Is that the theme just for the sheet? Maybe I'm wrong. Let me go in to put in pivot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, oh, my mistake. This should go to circuit. Cannot use this command on a protected sheet. The wrong one? Oh, geez. What's this called? Subtotal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I get to go to the theme and set circuit. Okay, so it is for the workbook, but you got to unprotect all the sheets. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the workbook finally, and I'm going to set some properties. So up here, I can set the title to be, thank you. You scared me there for a moment. Jan23 review. Not a very appropriate title, but the tags are going to be subtotal. And I think if you want multiple tags, you can just separate them with a comma. And now you want a category to be, this is for the Excel core course. I just made those stuff up. Doesn't really matter. And now I can hit back and then I'm going to hit file, save, and I'm going to pause to take any questions.